Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to resaw some material for the back. Now I realize most of you who actually build one will probably use some 1/4-inch plywood or whatever. We're going to do it in the old traditional way, and we're actually going to use what's called a shiplap back. And this is where we've got different pieces of wood, and one it has a notch in it, which we'll do on the dado blade, and one overlaps the other. So we'd have to resaw some material, meaning split it. Now, the key to resawing, there's several. First of all, you want as wide a blade as your bandsaw will allow, and as few a teeth. Now in this case, we're running a 3 teeth per inch. And you want to make sure that the bandsaw is setting 90 degrees to the blade. Mine's wiggling here. I have to put a shim under the floor. We've got an unlevel floor over here. We're sitting on something, but we'll take care of that in a minute. You want to make sure this is setting 90 degrees, and if it's not, you want to adjust to where you are. Now, the other thing you want to do is you want to compensate for the drift in the bandsaw. Now, what am I talking about? Drift is, very few bandsaws will actually saw straight. They kind of like to drift, and you have to compensate for that. The easiest way to do that is just take a board of anything and draw you a straight line on it. 18 inches, 2 foot, whatever. Take your bandsaw and freehand saw you a straight line up until about the middle. Make sure you have good tension on the blade. Then adjust your fence to fit the outer edge of your board. You can usually, depending upon the bandsaws, you can loosen these bolts and do that. And that sets the fence, again, compensating for the drift. Then you're ready to resaw. Okay, we're going to get our material ready and resaw it. Now, what I have is right here, I have a piece of 5/4 poplar. And this 5/4 is going to give me, again, about 1.25 inch thickness. I can resaw it and get it let me see what I got here. I'm getting about 3/8 pieces out of this. If I'm using a piece of 4/4, and I want my back in this to be somewhere around 1/4, 5/16, thick as I can, but I also realize that resawing it, I'm not, if you need 1/4 inch, you're not going to resaw 1/4 inch because you've got to come back and clean it up. So if I've got 3/8, I'm probably going to get 5/16 to 1/4 inch out of it. But remember when we talked about acclimating wood, the inside of this is not as dry as the outside. So once we resaw it, we're going to have to do something to help eliminate cupping and issues. And that's why we're resawing it now. Okay, I'm going to come back and we'll resaw. Okay, now this is a jig we're having manufactured, and that's not what this is about. But you can see what this jig does is it's got feather boards top and bottom, and we can adjust. Because what we want to do is we want to be able to help us just keep something that keeps us steady and true to their fence. And you notice, of course, we've got a tall fence. Again, the 5/4 is going to give us 3 cuts. 4/4 is going to give us 2 cuts. And that's what we're going to be sawing the oak. So we're going to get these sawn. Then we're going to come back and so you help you understand a little bit on resawing, we're going to come back with a little different animal and see what we got to do. Okay, this is a little different animal. What I've got is I've got a piece of 8/4. And I don't know if you can see on camera, but it's got a pretty good bow to it. And it's got some twist to it. So to resaw it into some back material that's good for the painted one makes sense. Plus it's sappy, and you know, it's just one of those pieces. Yeah, it's kind of good. So I took one off, already resawed one, and they're going to do fine for this back. Now, what I want you to notice, can you see the bar that we've got here? Move it out a little bit. It's a round bar that attaches to our fence. Now, if you don't have one, you can certainly just take a dowel and rig you up one. Not hard. What this does, this is going to set just behind the blade, and it's going to become our fence. Now the reason for the bar is the bar will allow me to track this bow. Now when we go to put it in the pie safe, because we're going to be doing this shiplap, if we have any bow to it, we'll put one with the bow going one way and one with the bow going the other way and counterbalance it, and we'll come up with a nice back. But I think once we resaw this, sticker it, get it nice and stacked nice, and let it dry, acclimate well, I think it's going to be pretty straight and do well. Okay, that's the way this works. And works pretty good. All right. All right, we took the backs that we resawed. I went ahead and put them through the planer. Now, you know, a couple of these, they were literally trying to cup as they came off the saw. Seen it happen many, many times. Now remember, we used the planer dog and all of that to flatten and level. And we talked about how those planer rollers can mash it flat and plane it. Well, this time we used that to our advantage because it would mash that cut piece and plane it, because we know that it's going to try to move around a little bit more. So I went ahead and planed them. Now here's where there's a which is right and which is wrong. Do you go ahead and plane it, or do you let it acclimate? And normally I let them acclimate, but I was looking at these, and this material is pretty dry, and it was pretty stable actually. So I went ahead and milled it. But I know it's going to try to move on me. Now I'm going to say this, and you got to think about it. Holding wood in a position is oftentimes easier, actually it is easier than trying to move it once it's completely dried. So what we did was we planed them. Everything's down now to, I don't know, strong 1/4 of an inch. And you see what we've done. We've stickered them and taped them. Now these I just used a little bit of masking tape. This I used some packaging tape. But everything's flat and we're holding it that way. Now we're going to take them in the back, set them on something flat. And you notice again, now we'll make sure whatever we put down, there's some stickers under there so it can get some air. Doesn't have to be a lot. This is just some scrap out of the scrap bin. Now, that said, we're going to do the same thing with the post. Now let's assume when you're working on this pie safe, you know, unless you're able to go in there and just get it all done, those posts are going to set around something. When you're not working those posts, tape them nice together. Keep them straight. Holding it. That's what we're talking about. Now these shelves, when we process these down and we get them flat and level, the minute we do, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put them in plastic bags. Trash bags, so they stay that way. That, you know, push as much of the air out as you can. That puts it in an environment that it's not, that you don't have a lot of changes. Okay, it protects it from the environment. And even though, you know, this is mid-January, it's pretty cold outside and the heat's on. You know, I remember one time, I'll never forget this. I had glued up some panels, had them sitting on top of a bench. We had a ceiling fan. We went to lunch. And when we come back, that top board on that thing, it was just like this. Now, we were able to turn it over and basically do the same thing, and it came back a lot. And another trick for getting a cup out once it's set is you put the upside out in the sun and put a little dampen the other side, because what you're doing is you're causing one side to swell and the other side to dry. Again, a lot of cupping and whatever is the result of a moisture imbalance. As long as you remember that, you know, if you're planing a piece of wood down, let's say you were planing a piece of 5/4 wood down to 3/4. The best thing you can do is try to take off as best you can equal amounts off both sides. That keeps that moisture in balance. It's a big deal, and it'll keep your wood from moving around so much on you. Okay, we're going to get these in the back. Then we're going to come back and look at truing up the posts and getting them ready to start building with. All right, square up your post, which we've already done, and which I just told you. It's a Friday afternoon, and these are going to be setting over the weekend, so they're taped. Some packing tape. We're not going to let them have a chance to move. Now, I'll be here tomorrow, and odds are what I may do is take the tape off and turn them inside out to let the inside surfaces get some air. Again, creating an equilibrium. I know that seems like a lot to go through, and I know it seems like a real pain, but I'm going to tell you guys and gals, this ain't a brag, it's just a fact. I've been doing this stuff 30 some odd years, and I've never had a piece of furniture come back because of an issue. Just haven't. But we kind of go the mile and make sure we don't have an issue. And one of the biggest keys is the stuff we've been going over here. That's why we've gone over it so hard. I've said this many, many times, this fixing the build takes a whole lot more work and effort than the actual build. And it's something a lot of people choose to ignore. Then they get in trouble and wonder why. Now, The last thing I'm going to do this afternoon before we go is I need to glue up 3 tops. Now the pie safe is what, 39.5 so wide overall, so I want about 1.25 inches overhang. That comes into what, about 42 or something. So I'm probably going to make it about 43, 44 inches wide. I think I'm 17 deep and I want 1.5 inches, so that'd be 18.25. So I'm going to glue up 19, 20 inches wide by 43, 44 inches, just like we did the shelves. I'll use a little nicer wood, but you know, I'm going to glue them up. And but odds are I will not take these, I'm not going to take these down to size until I absolutely need them. That way they can kind of sit there, and any acclimating or whatever they need to do, they can do while we're building. Now, back to the post. Now this is just a small piece, but it's the same principle. All you want to do is, again, if you need to scoot it across the joiner because it's acclimated and it's moved some, do that. Go do exactly what we did the first time, you know, until you have 2 straight and square sides. Then simply go to your table saw and saw them. Now, in the case of these posts, we came in at 1 7/8 inches. Now the plan calls for 1 3/4, but I also told you I want them as thick as possible. But if you need to go to 1 3/4 inches, that's fine. The key is to get them straight. Whatever your indexable side is, let me find some chalk real quick. Again, it's, you know, make sure that blade's at 90 degrees. Make sure you index off of your square sides and cut it. Now, I'm going to show you something about cutting it. I want this at 1 3/4. Now, I'm running right now, and I could switch to a 40-tooth, be a little bit, maybe a little better. But this will do to show you. I'm running a 30-tooth glue line rip. Now what I'm going to do, what I want to show you here is cutting something like this. Like I said, I'm at 1 3/4 inches, but I'm about a 1/16 strong. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Now I'm going to show you why. Now I'm going to come in to my final cut. The reason for this is if I get any blade deflection, I get any, you know, burning or anything like that, it's far easier just to scoot this through, taking a 1/16 of an inch off. That allows you to have a nice clean fluid motion going through. Gives you a lot cleaner cut. And what you're going to wind up with is a surface that doesn't have a bunch of burns and saw marks and all that stuff in it, and using a good quality blade. Now, once we've got all of our machining and everything done, in case I forget to tell you, don't you let me now, you want to make sure you sand the insides of these posts, because once we get this thing together, that's going to be a tough area to clean up. Okay, next, what we're going to be doing, we're going to cut the post to length. We've already milled up the stock. Now we haven't cut the width or length. All we did was mill the thickness. Got everything straight, and as you can see, we're nice and straight. So now we're at the point that everybody's hopefully been waiting on. I know I have. I'm tired of prepping wood. We're now at the point we can actually build something, I think. Our posts are now ready to go. And like I said, we've already processed our material to thickness. Now we've not cut size yet. Now what I want to do now is I want to, again, on my post, I want to pick my post, what's going to be where. Now here's what I'm looking at. If I've got some cathedral grain going on this face, then I want some cathedral grain going on the other side. But I can also tell you I'm going to try to get the straightest grain I can for the doors. You know, we don't have a lot of frontal visual going on here. The tins are the focal point. Kind of like doing a raised panel door. You know, the cleaner the grain is around it, the straighter the grain, the more it accents the panel, like framing a picture. Think of it in those terms. So actually what I want to do is I actually want to turn this to where I've got as straight a grain on the face as possible. I've also, in this poplar, I've got some green. And I'm looking at this post and I'm seeing the green here and I'm seeing some green here. So I'm thinking if I turn this, say, this way, I'm going to put that in the back. And I've got the largest area of green down here, and hopefully I can taper that out when we taper legs. So these are things you want to look for. So I'm going to put the cleanest, straightest grained material in the front. That's what I want. So those are going to be the two I pick out first. And again, I'm going to hide my worst post in the back. So I'm going to lay these out. It's pretty nice, straight grain, clean on all the visual points. And we'll mark everything. You know, left front, right front, whatever. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to tell the story. Meaning we're going to take them and lay out exactly where we're going to be putting our mortises. Okay? See, I got a lot of green on that. I'm going to put that in here because I know that's the way that leg is going to be tapering. Yep, and as you look, see I've got relative, now again, this is one we're either going to make, I think we're going to make it look like walnut, I'm not sure yet, but, or cherry, but working with that green is a little more difficult, but we're going to be doing that. What you want to avoid in a poplar is that really, really, really super dark green, unless you're going really dark, and we don't want to do that. Okay, what I want to do is I want to lay out for my top and my bottom rails so we can get the mortises cut. Now, our top and our bottom rails are 2.5 inches. That is our exposure. Let me explain. When we put the door in here, we want the door to have something to close against. Make sense?
a stop, and a seal. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just cut a little teeny rabbet in this, in our stock, so that the door comes in and closes against this point. Now this means it's going to be setting in here like this, and we're going to have this notch, and that's where the door is going to close. Now we want this elevation right here to be 1/4 of an inch. So if we add 2.5 inches plus our 1/4, we're now at 2 3/4. So that will be our actual cut width for the rail, top and bottom. When we lay out our mortises, because we want our opening from top to bottom to be 37.5, we have to be careful. Because we got to lay our mortises out for the 2 3/4, but we have to measure it as if it were 2.5. Does that make sense to you? I don't want to confuse you here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this. I'm going to put 2 marks. One is going to be the 2 3/4. The other is the 2.5. Because when I measure down, I want to go from the 2.5 inch mark, and I'm using the 1 inch method, which means I'm actually measuring off of the 1 inch mark so I don't have any error because of the movement of the tape in. So adding 1 inch, I'm going to go down 38.5. You got that? Now, what I have to do to get my actual, where my mortise is going to go, I got to back up 1/4, and then I got to come back from that point down 2 5/8. I mean 2 3/4. I keep wanting to say 5/8. I'm sorry. So here's what's going to happen. Let me get a combo square and draw this in so you understand it completely. Okay, this being the bottom, from this point to this point is going to be the actual cross member or the rail at 2 3/4. This is going to be the door bottom. Now I realize right now that may be, and at the top it's just reverse. This is the actual cross member, and this is the door bottom, door top. Now I'm going to leave you to digest that just a little bit, and next we'll lay it out and go ahead and mortise for our top, for our rails. Now, one of the things you'll notice, we're doing all of our work while the posts are in the square. We haven't cut any tapers yet. And actually, they'll probably be one of the last things that we do. Because one of the things I want to do, if you looked at the beginning of this episode, and we're flashing through some pie safes, you're going to see one there that's got a really nice scroll on the front. So what I've elected to do on the red oak one is, again, just so you get a look at different variations, I'm going to scroll the front as well as the sides. We're going to fancy it up or dress it up a little bit. As you saw when we looked in the first episode we did, these things are everywhere. They did them in every kind of configuration you can think of. So you might want to dress one up just a little bit and not have it quite so straight line. So we'll take a look at that.